Okay, so I did a whole recording, and now it's gone. So I'm gonna do this all over again. If I have to do a whole bunch of cuts, I'm gonna have to do a whole bunch of cuts. It is what it is. Welcome to Project Baldur quick update. While I'll make it as quick as possible, I am going to go over some very important details about what Project Baldur is and some of the important details you need to know before hopping in. So, Project Baldur was an idea that I came up after playing Baldur's Gate 3, where I was like, I wanted to create a custom path for Baldur's Gate 3 in 5e for basically an example to show that you guys can do this. Like, it's not like an impossible thing to do, especially for newbies or people who are first getting exposed to D&D through Baldur's Gate 3. So what I did was I put all the NPCs into a bowl and basically had them choose two characters. Two of these random characters. They would not know who they were until they were picked, and we basically go over them together. They choose one of these characters, and those characters are the ones that are replaced by some of the main characters in Baldur's Gate 3. So these are the characters that they have grabbed. I'll go over them one by one. Drake ended up grabbing Alan Alith, who is the proprietor and bar owner of one of the most famous, if not the most famous, Baldur's Gate taverns, the Elf Song Tavern. So he ended up getting a pretty important character to that portion of Baldur's Gate.
Aye. Pull up a seat. If you can find one spare, that is.
Joey ended up grabbing Des Kinshaw, who is this gnome whose family is, I think, trying to migrate into Baldur's Gate somehow. He was a farmer, and basically he's staying in the El Song Tavern at the moment until he can find some footing inside of Baldur's Gate, since the Absolute have invaded.
Thanks again, stranger. You'll make her guide you.
Chris has grabbed Lucretius. Lucretius is the owner of the Circus of the Last Days in Act 3, and a necromancer as well.
Oh dear, screaming children, an oozing corpse, and it's not even my birthday. Lucretius, ringmaster, necromancer, bringer of the night. Oh, and wine lover extraordinaire.
Christian ended up grabbing Sami, who is one of the half-orc bodyguards to one of the Dwarven shopkeepers in Baldur's Gate.
Don't draw any trouble on old Enthar. He acts like he's up for it, but he's retired for a reason.
Justo ended up grabbing Loretta. Loretta is a deep gnome, one of the few deep gnome that get kidnapped by these Duergar in Act 1.
Move on! I gave her everything, and she has the gall to send you to break me! Get us out of here, all of us! And hope for her sake her path never crosses mine again.
Mike ended up grabbing Sarth. Sarth is a Githyanki that you come across when Lae'zel ends up confronting them about where to locate the creche, and you are introduced into a scene where they have a dragon and they end up taking out some of the local bodyguards.
No, look up. That was your last chance, Istik. Now burn!
Yeah, so technically Sarth is one of those encounters that you can come across if you're not able to talk your way through it, and it's a pretty hard fight, so it's interesting to see her now in the shoes of Lae'zel. And finally, Prince grabbed Salazan. Salazan is the bodyguard, or at least not the bodyguard. I guess you can say that. The watch. The watch that you go to when you first get to Joaquin's Rest. The Zentirum hideout. He is literally the person that you first come across that you have to, I think, give a password to before you can enter.
A human man awaits you, a spell crackling at his fingertips. He freezes, waiting on your next word.
That ain't the passphrase.
And those are all the characters that they rolled and picked from in our little test adventure. So, the only character that you really have to note of that probably won't come up a lot, since I essentially will be playing as her because Mike won't be here that often, is Sarth. Okay, so now that you know that the characters that we're playing or that were picked from the bowl, let me go over the quick recap of what we did in our test session to see if we even wanted to do this. So in Project Baldur, we basically led off with what happened in our Descent into Avernus over in Dungeon Pizza Archives. So in Dungeon Pizza Archives, we did the Descent into Avernus book. It was one of our first early sessions where we had some very iffy footage, but, you know, the memories are still there, and it was fun to look back on it. So one of our PCs, a human wizard named Candlekeeper, ended up being the person to help Zerial raise Elturel from Avernus after convincing Zerial to step away from her madness for a moment and allow Elturel to be risen up again. And as that happened, Elturel, we literally went off in the scene where Elturel was getting risen. And after it got risen, all these tieflings that were a part of Elturel ended up getting decided to split off and go into different directions, as not only did they want to be far away from Elturel, they wanted to, they looked up and saw the Mind Flare ship that happens in BG3 slowly approaching Baldur's Gate. And that was our opening scene before we head right into the action. We introduced our characters one by one as they were coming out of these pods in the Nautiloid, and proceeded to go through the intro of Baldur's Gate 3, where they ended up fighting some intellect devourers, or more or less like intimidating them to run away, and essentially had the fight between the Mind Flare and the big demon with the good sword. I don't remember the name of the monster at the moment, but I know it starts with a C. Continuing on, they decided to go straight for, while a couple of people decided to fight, the rest decided, hey, we're going to go sprinting towards the nerves to connect them. So the nerves were connected, and the scene where you guys go plummeting from Avernus into the material plane of Baldur's Gate happens, and essentially they wake up the same way that you do in Baldur's Gate 3 right at the get-go, where you're like looking around and realizing that you should have been dead, but you're not. So they look around, and the only other important notice that's happened in the testing phases was that Loretta, which was Justo's character, the Deep Gnome, she ended up finding a random artifact that attached itself to her in Sami's backpack. How it got there, who knows? That's really all that happened in our test session, and this is where we're going to start off Baldur's Gate, or Project Baldur. They ended up they came across a couple of tieflings, like you do at the get-go. They talked to a couple of tieflings that happened to have a goblin kidnapped, and they basically asked if there was shelter nearby, and they talked about the tiefling camp, and they were allowed inside the tiefling camp, and that was it. We went for a long rest, and that's where the next episode is going to start. So this is the idea behind Project Baldur. It is a testing phase of a potential Baldur's Gate 3 adventure. It's one that's going to be official for our channel, and one that I would hope inspires others to potentially do, to see if there's something that they're interested in as far as Dungeons & Dragons goes. Especially with the popularity of Baldur's Gate 3 at the moment, and how much it has probably brought people to the D&D community. I think it's really important to kind of showcase those to people who are interested in D&D, to how fun the actual game is, and how much of a unique experience you can make it. So I hope you guys join us for the adventure. It should be a blast, and I hope you enjoy Project Baldur. We'll see you back here on Dungeon Pizza.